Hello everyone, and today you get full face me for the beginning of this video, and then I'll actually move into sharing my screen like I normally do. But today we're going to talk about kind of troubleshooting the system. We're getting simulators based on the idea of collecting data about a game, and the data is collected in multiple ways. One of the primary ways is the camera. The camera itself is very important in terms of detecting where units are and objectives are placed and dealing with scale measurements between those things. It makes it so that a person doesn't have to manually enter the exact location of every unit, model, objective, dice, just so that the system can work. So the camera is very important, and but the connection of detecting where things are and that sort of information is very sensitive. It's a very weak link. And it causes a lot of problems and has caused a lot of problems for our alpha and beta testers. So this video is about providing some of the tips. I think I have 9 of them written down for kind of making sure the camera system works like it should. And these are very basic tips. For example, the first one is make sure you have adequate lighting. As more lights go out in the room, or if you play in a dark, shadowy place, it's much harder for a camera to take a quality image. So first thing, most basic, make sure you have good lighting. Now, the next thing is to follow on-screen directions. I know that sounds a little tricky, but the fact that the directions appear in multiple places can sometimes be confusing. And I'm going to switch up my face cam to show my actual screen. And actually on this, I'm going to disable where I'm seeing so we can see the entire screen. And I'm going to show you what I mean. When hooking up a camera, all you have to do is go to the camera tab in a game and scan that with your phone. Now, that's all you have to do. That's the first instruction. Scan the camera with your phone. And now I'm going to go back to my face and show you what it says. The first thing that it'll show is a screen like this, please rotate your device. Please do that. And then it only gives you one more piece of feedback, and that's this yellow box you see, asks you if you want to turn on audio. What this does is whenever some voice or whenever a voice plays in the game, when you're playing a game, it'll automatically play that voice through your phone speakers, and it'll also make noises when the camera takes a picture. And this is just for feedback purposes. Listening to a noise and knowing that an actual picture was taken does provide some sort of mental sanity check. So follow directions. Now that I have my camera like this, I just have to put it over the battlefield. And one thing I have found to be completely helpful, and this is my third tip, is to use one of these kind of camera mounts that has like a magnet in it. So you have kind of a magnet, and then using a magnet mount where you're going to put it up. This just lets you easily put up the camera and take it down if necessary. Kind of those claw hands that might grab the camera do cause problems. And we'll talk about those problems in a second. But, so I just use one of those camera things on the back of my phone, like you can see there, and that just makes me easily able to clip it up and bring it back down. Now, you can face your camera in either direction, but it naturally defaults to taking a picture from the front camera on your phone instead of the back sort of environmental camera. So it naturally takes a picture from the front camera. That's where it wants to take a picture from. And it's that way because I found it very helpful to be able to see one screen when you are playing the game. This just helps to notice so this tip is leave your screen facing down. And that is because what you want to see, that lets you see the screen, and sometimes messages are passed to the screen. For example, a quick flashing of your screen will happen every time it takes a picture. Just another kind of notification that a picture was received and taken. Other things can happen on the camera, such as and the most important of which is I'm going to rotate this, a viewport that if facing down, you can see exactly where the camera is seeing and where it will take a picture. This kind of helps you, kind of look up at the camera, which is a little bit tricky to get to, and see if it's looking at the tabletop. So just having the face facing downwards really helps with that. The third reason to have the face facing downwards is you can tell if the camera turned off. I used to use one of those kind of grippy things that kind of held both sides of the camera. And what would happen there is sometimes it would hold the power button down and turn the phone off. Or sometimes the phone ran out of batteries, and being able to see the kind of like unlocked screen and see what the camera is seeing is just very helpful to know, to help debug if you think the system isn't working, be able to look up there and be like, okay, I see what the camera sees, great. All right, so I'm now just going to take this and put it above the battlefield so we can keep kind of going through these tips and tricks to getting the camera working. And you see with the camera mount, well, with the magnetic mount, that's all it has to do. You don't have to try to fit it in some sort of claw or arm or screw it onto something. It just snaps up there. Very easy. All right, now we're going to go to, we're going to show back my screen. And looking at this part right here, this is the, after you've connected your camera, there's lots of places where it's constantly showing you if a camera is connected. And if it shows the camera is disconnected, then you may have a problem. For example, right here, camera is connected as soon as I connected it. Inside, whenever you see the map, there's a camera connected on the map visualization. Also, anywhere inside the game, in the header of the game, I'm just going to start a game right now just to demonstrate. There's always there's a system right here that says it's connected. Right now, it's buggy. That was a terrible example, but there's situations that show you if a camera is connected. And I'll get this one fixed tonight, so it should be saying camera connected. So I'm going to go back into my game, and we can talk a little bit more about kind of camera details. So the first is, once you get a camera connected, I always like going over to the map settings tab and taking a photo. This is just a manual way to trigger kind of the analysis of the system. And it just kind of tells you, and it kind of can give you some feedback as to what's going on. For example, just kind of tells you the path and course the analysis is taking. And that is a really helpful debugging tool. So whenever, that's the next tip is, after you connect your camera, take a picture. You can then toggle to see what the camera is seeing using this button. And that may help you adjust the camera to see more of the battlefield or adjust some of the errors that may have happened. All right. The next one I have here is camera positioning, like I just said. As you can see in this picture that I just took, you saw me put the camera up. I didn't put much effort to take. The camera is not capturing the whole battlefield. So always make sure that you check kind of what the camera is looking at so that it's always capturing everywhere that it can see on the battlefield. Now just a couple more tips that are very helpful. The first is contrast. There are some very important things that the camera needs to be able to see and recognize. Those are, it needs to be able to see the objects on the battlefield. And if you don't have a lot of contrast there, it becomes harder and harder to see. Like I have this kind of, you can see a couple different table mats I have laid down. I have this gray one, this green one, and this vinyl one, which I never really use, but it just kind of lays there on the table. And if my models or my let's say I had like a snow background and I'm using these white and black transponders, it becomes harder to see and recognize those. Or let's say I'm using a snow background and I'm playing as Space Wolves, which is a reasonable thing to do. That's a typical combination. But if my Space Wolves are all painted white on a snowy background because they're all camouflage, that becomes much harder to detect, which is a big downside for camouflage units. If you're painting your camouflage units to match your tabletop, the camouflage is going to work. Okay, the next tip that I have is objective visibility. You'll see if I turn off my objective overlay that I have these two objectives here and here that are easily visible from the camera. But with lots of terrain setups, these objectives may disappear. The cameras look in straight lines and they can't see through things, and that's the only way it's determining where objectives and units are things that it can see. So as things hide under terrain, this is mostly a terrain problem, it may hide map object units, and that becomes a problem. So low terrain really helps, or flat terrain, which I realize takes a large amount away from the game. I'm trying to solve this problem. It's just very hard. But just trying to keep things flat really helps, but always making sure you can see objective 1 and objective 2. Now I'm going to show kind of an experiment of other things that could potentially go wrong that hide objective 1 and objective 2, and that you should probably avoid. So I'm going to go to my tabletop behind me. I'm going to turn on my camera so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm just going to go to the tabletop behind me, and I'm going to put some of my models on top of my objective 2. Okay, so I did that, and now objective 2, it has models piled on top of it. And so if we were to take a photo, we'll do that, and we'll just kind of look at the picture that comes up again. Okay, so I took a photo, and you'll see that it's sending me back this error message, could not identify objective 2 in the image. And I'm going to click off this. Unfortunately, I can't zoom in on the image. I can get rid of this, but you can tell there is an objective 2 under there. Like that's where my objective, but it's all covered in units. This could happen if a bunch of units pile onto an objective, but it's possible, and that would stop the analysis because it can't see objective 2, which is a crucial part in determining distances and where non-visible map objects are. Non-visible map objects being things like deployment zones. So there we have. So always keep objective 2 clear. So if I were to move those units off, and take another picture, I move them off, so now objective 2 is visible once again. And it'll go through this analysis real quick and not have the same error because we can see objective 2, and it can now identify objective 2 in the image, and so there's no issue. That same problem will occur if you obscure objective 1. Now, any other objectives on the map are not as important. You can obscure them and it will guess their location, but with objective 1 and objective 2, things must be precise. And that's why you see so much information in every video I give about objective placement guides. I always mention you should place these 2 objectives very well. And once you do that and focus a lot on placing objectives 1 and objectives 2 correctly in their correct map locations and the correct distance apart, which should naturally happen if you place them in the exact locations. But as you start setting up the system, you'll find out that that's harder than it looks. Placing like objectives exactly where they should go, like coordinate style, it becomes much more tricky. And it's just important to kind of focus on objective 1 and objective 2. Now, moving on to the next tip I have. This is, oops, pulling up my tip list. Transponder visibility. Just like objectives, transponders are important for increasing the accuracy of detections, and making sure that they're visible really helps match up units and miniatures correctly. And then also along with that, making sure you move your transponders with the unit they are assigned to. Now, another less known trick to all this is make sure your units maintain unit coherency of whichever game system you're using. In Warhammer 40K, this is typically one miniatures in a unit should be within 2 inches of another miniature in that unit. And this just kind of helps along with transponders to increase accuracy detection of units and miniatures. So always maintain unit coherency. You're supposed to anyways. This is just another reason to do so. And then make sure you maintain a clear field of view. And by that, I mean, when a miniature dies, remove it from the tabletop, but also remove it from where the camera can see. For example, right now the camera sees 10 miniatures, but let's say 1 miniature died and I just moved him off to the side of the battlefield, like it's typically done. So you'll see this picture in a second. I'm going to take a photo. Let's say 1 miniature died and he's moved off to the side of the tabletop. So I moved him back over here, okay? It will still detect that as a miniature. and it'll try to figure out what miniature it is. It doesn't know that that is the miniature that died and that you pulled off the tabletop. It just finds a miniature there and it's like, where does this miniature belong? And it can cause errors in the system. So make sure kind of the field of view of the camera always stays clean. And if you kind of follow these general rules, then the kind of accurate the system and how smoothly the system operates in terms of integrating with the tabletop, the entire pipeline just becomes much smoother if you follow these general tips that I've given here. So I just wanted to say thank you for your time. And if you're playing the game and you find other tips that really help you out, whether they are with the camera or just how you manage the tabletop, given that there's this new camera taking pictures, let me know, because I always like to hear what kind of makes things easier for people. So thank you so much, and I look forward to posting another video. By the way, my next video is going to be on a similar topic, but once again, stressing kind of objectives 1 and objective 2, and how you can kind of use what you see in this image to kind of debug your battlefield if you're struggling with it for the first time. And so thank you, and we'll talk about that in our next video.